Today, we're going to be talking about the characters that are going to show up in this Marvel vs. DC TV show. So, let's begin. We're going to first start out with the DC characters, both heroes and villains, so let's begin. So I want to first talk about, let's go through it chronologically. Like first we're going to go Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern, Aquaman, Shazam, Martian Manhunter, Green Arrow, Black Canary, Firestorm, and Hawkman for the most part. Then we're going to flip over to Marvel and the other characters. So let's begin. So for Batman villains, we're going to have Sal Maroni. It has been confirmed for this Marvel vs. DC TV show. Now, for those who don't know, Sal Maroni is the person who essentially creates Two-Face. He's the one in the comics who throws the acid on Two-Face's face, causing him to become Two-Face. So Sal Maroni does now, like everyone on this in this video, he will have a huge, very big role, almost like a series regular in seasons 3, 4, and 5. He has a reoccurring. He's reoccurring in season 2, 6, maybe 1 and 7. I'm not sure about those two. Another Batman villain is Crazy Quill. He is one of Batman's goofier villains. He's not like one of his more serious villains. If you like Rainbow Raider and you like Batman, you might like Crazy Quill. Crazy Quill in the comics is a Batman villain, but more specifically a Robin villain. He was shot and got blinded by a rival gang, who then developed a helmet. Because he was blind, the only thing he could just see is bright colors. Well, they made him a helmet where he can see again. Crazy Quill is like Sal Maroni, recurring in seasons 1, 2, and 7. Main role in seasons 3, 4, and 5. Well, I forgot to mention, he's also recurring in 6. The next one we're going to be talking about is Victor Zsasz. If you play Batman Arkham Asylum, you would know this character. Also Arkham City. For those who don't know, Zsasz is a serial killer in Gotham City who carves marks, who cuts his flesh every time he kills a person in the comics, and he's killed a lot of people. Like you thought Carnage was crazy, Zsasz is even crazier. The next one we have is Maxie Zeus, one of my personal favorite Batman villains. He's a very underrated villain. Zeus in the comics, Maxie Zeus, was a Greek teacher who loved Greek history. But then at one point, his wife died, and it turned him into a delusional maniac crime lord who now believes he is Zeus. So he's kind of like, think of Dr. Alchemy, who's also in the show, just crazier. I think that's enough for some Batman villains. I might do a part 2 of this because, again, there's so many villains, it's hard to talk about all of them. I'll try my best to showcase as many. So let's go on to the Superman villains. So the first one we have is the Ultra Humanite. If you watch just like the cartoon show, you would know this character. And yes, he is in the show. Like, I think I should probably begin not mention this, but he is going to be recurring in seasons 1, 2, 6, and 7. Main role in seasons 3, 4, 5, the next Superman villain we have is, well, I forgot to mention about the Ultra Humanite's backstory. Basically, he was a crippled scientist who wanted, world domination, who eventually learned how to transfer his mind into other things. Like, there was even a time he even transferred his mind to, a T-Rex and even an ant. But his most famous is the albino gorilla. He's in a lot of ways Superman's Gorilla Grodd, in a lot of ways. I know a lot of people compare it to, which I do understand. Anyways, let's move on. The next Superman villain we have is, well, I'm gonna BlackRock. For those who don't know, BlackRock is a Superman villain who uses I think a rock, something like that, which grants them Superman levels of strength, speed, and durability, or something like that. I'm not too familiar with him. I might have to do more research, but still. BlackRock is confirmed for this TV show. He's a very forgotten Superman villain. I think there's maybe a few YouTubers that do videos on them. Anyways, let's move on. The next Superman villain we're gonna be talking about is I don't want to say Metallo because we all know he's gonna be in the show. Remember, I like to at least even it up. Maybe Toyman. Yeah, Toyman. Toyman is confirmed for this show. In the comics, he's delusional because he thinks that people are no longer liking the toys and he wants to make a world better. Although he's deranged or something like that, I don't know. If any of you heard of Toyman and you want to see him in this show, and you understand his motivation in the comics, please write them down. Anyways, let's move on to some Wonder Woman villains. So the first one we have is Dr. Poison. Dr. Poison, at first is like a Nazi scientist who's really good with poisons, and then she eventually translates Dr. Poison into her granddaughter or something like that. I don't know. DC is so confusing sometimes. It's hard to keep track. But I mean, this is DC we're talking about. Another Wonder Woman villain that's confirmed. I like to keep some of these very short, like 3 or 4. I think that's good enough number. Is Cersei. Cersei, I'm pretty sure most people should know her. Cersei in the comics is based off the goddess Cersei, I think the Greek goddess who transforms men into animals. I think it makes sense that she will be like that in the show. So yeah, let's go on and continue. Let's go for another Wonder Woman villain. Dr. Cyber. Dr. Cyber in the comics is like a person who agrees to take robotics elements, parts. I don't know much about Dr. Cyber other than she's a Wonder Woman villain. I do know that she does team up with other Wonder Woman villains to create the Villainy Inc. something like that. Anyways, the last Wonder Woman villain we're going to be talking about is Veronica Kill. She's pretty much considered to be Wonder Woman's Lex Luthor, although I would say Cheetah is more Wonder Woman's Lex Luthor, not really Veronica Kill. Anyways, Veronica Kill is pretty much Lex Luthor, just not in a war suit. Veronica Kill in the comics is more of like a business one. She knows what she's doing. She hires stuff, etc. Right now we're 8 minutes into this video. Veronica Kill is a very interesting one, and yes, I don't understand why she's not one of her more reoccurring. Anyways, let's move on. Let's go on to the Flash's Rogue Scary. Now the first one is, I mentioned this one for the Maxi Zeus one, Dr. Alchemy. He's one of them. I know he does show up in season 3 of the Flash, but I mean it's just season 3. This one, he's reoccurring to this entire show. His other personality, Mr. Element. This is where it can sometimes cause some confusion. Mr. Element was actually, at first, the split personality of Dr. Alchemy's identity in the comics, Albert Desmond. Eventually, Albert turned to the Philosopher's Stone when he became Dr. Alchemy, and left his element gun to other criminals. Alexander Petrov, something like that, I think that's his name, became the new Mr. Element, and like Dr. Alchemy, he's just as recurring as him. The next villain we have Abracadabra. Now, Abracadabra in the comics is a supervillain of the Flash. He's from the 64th century who uses technology that looks like magic. Abracadabra is one of the most dangerous villains in the DC universe. He's so underrated. I don't know why they haven't done where Abracadabra is like a Just League level threat. I mean, sure, Or I think he's not, at times, according to DC Wiki, he is a member of the Rogues, but you can kind of understand why he's never a main member of the Rogues. He's just sometimes too powerful. For he can literally just take on the Rogues and the Flash himself and still win. Anyways, the next one up is the Top. The Top is such an underrated villain. Most people make fun of his name for some reason, and where I'm like, well, why don't you make fun of Spidey villains? They have sillier code names. The Top is actually a really cool name. I actually would say that the Top is probably DC's most underrated villain. Because in the comics, his name is Roscoe. He has the ability of spinning like a top, which hence his name. In the Prime Earth or Rebirth or New 52, whatever at this point, I really don't know at this point. He has the ability to spin because he is a conduit of the Speed Force. Speaking of the Speed Force, we have the Turtle. And what I mean by this Turtle in the comic books is an enemy of the Flash who's very slow. In the new continuity, the Rebirth, the New 52, he has something called the Still Force. The Still Force is pretty much the Speed Force, just, instead of running really fast, you can make everything super slow. So, Turtle, Top, Mr. Element, Dr. Alchemy, and Abracadabra are confirmed for this show. You could say that's 5 characters. Dr. Alchemy and Mr. Element can still be considered as the same character. Let's go on to Green Lantern. So the first one up we have is Sonar. Sonar in the comics, his name is Vito Walden. He is from a European country called Moldra, something like that. I'm terrible with pronunciations, so don't judge me. Sonar uses a sonar gun, which allows him to do a supersonic punch, every time Green Lantern can sometimes come up, he can just do a punch and it creates like a sound, something like that. Sonar is a very dangerous supervillain. He's one of the deadliest DC villains in the comics, but he's kind of underrated as well. Sonar, obviously, like the others, is reoccurring in season 2, 1, 6, and 7. The others, not that much. Serious regulars. The next one up is Major Disaster. Major Disaster is pretty much, if you like Weather Wizard, you might like him just as much. Major Disaster can create disasters instead of, creating different types of weathers. That's why his name is Major Disaster. The next ones we're going to have are actually the Lantern Corps. So, usually you don't see Lantern Corps in movies or TV shows because that's a lot of characters, but in this one, I'm going to do the best as I could. So, I'm just going to mention all the evil ones. So the Sinestro Corps, the Red Lantern Corps, the orange, Orange Lantern Corps, and the Black Lantern Corps. Those are the evil ones. So basically, I cannot mention the first 3. Well, maybe not for the orange or black one, but red and yellow, yeah. Red and yellow are way too much. If I'd be here all day, maybe even recording this into like 3 separate days. It's not a good idea. So, if you want some history, I might just post in the comment. I might post a comment saying here are the Red Lantern and Sinestro Corps members that you can check out. Anyways, for the Orange Lantern Corps, there's not as many, but I forgot some of their names. But basically, they're just orange constructs. You could say, because Lord Fleece is in the show, he's a main role in the show, basically a series regular. Like Batman's still a series regular, Lord Fleece is just the same amount as Batman. Lord Fleece, you could say, will Lord Fleece be like the entirety? Not really. Season 5, major role. Like main role, just as much as the others. I think every season he's a main role. But because his orange, it's a bit different where we're just gonna take that out, but don't worry, he will still have some of them as well. The Black Lantern Corps is the shortest amount because it's Black Hand, who is in the show, Necron. You can also argue Scar, the corrupt guardian, but still. So finally, our last one, we're going to be talking, our last Green Lantern villain, it is going to be the Shark. In the comics, the Shark is a mutated tiger shark. In the comics, he's an enemy of both Green Lantern and Aquaman, so you kind of have that Aquaman villain. And speaking of Aquaman, let's talk about some Aquaman villains. One of them, as I just mentioned, is the Shark. The next one up is the Scavenger. Scavenger is an international criminal who scavenges the waters to, and fights Aquaman. Next one up is the Fisherman. I don't know much about the Fisherman, other than he's just one of his, he uses fishing rods, weapons. So I don't know much about the Scavenger and the Fisherman as much right now, besides I'm on my computer. I just know that they're enemies of Aquaman. So that's technically considered 3. The last Aquaman villain we're going to be talking about is Ocean Master. I would actually consider Ocean Master to be DC's leader in a lot of ways. But anyways, the point is that the Ocean Master will show up and like the others, reoccurring in seasons 1, 2, 6, and 7. None of the others. Let's go on to Shazam's. Now, I want to quickly address for Martian Manhunter, his is going to be a lot, and maybe even Black Canary, those two are going to be a lot quicker, because they don't have nearly as much villains. So Martian Manhunter, the Human Flame is one of his greatest, is actually one of his earliest villains. He's a really, in the comics, he obviously is a great foe for Martian Manhunter, because Martian Manhunter, for those who don't know, has a weakness of fire, which is a really bad weakness. Because, even low-level criminals can take him down. All they have to do is just create a fire and then just push him in there, which isn't that hard to do. I mean, Batman's done it before. I really think DC should start giving the heroes harder weaknesses. The weaknesses that are, harder to exploit. I think that's a lot better. But Human Flame is one of Martian Manhunter's greatest enemies, and he's in the show, Coming up, the next Martian Manhunter villain we're going to be talking about is Malefic, or Malefic, something like that. Malefic in the comics is Martian Manhunter's brother and arch enemy. Malefic is essentially caused a rape of Manhunt of his brother's wife, which led him to no longer having the telepathy that normal Martians have, but also did not have the weaknesses of fire. So Malefic also caused a holocaust of the Martians as well. Malefic is essentially Martian Manhunter. As you can kind of tell, he's essentially Martian Manhunter's reverse Flash or Sinestro in a lot of ways. And now, again, Martian Manhunter is a bit quicker. I think 2 is good, because those are the main villains for right now. I will do a part 2. I will talk more about Martian Manhunter villains, but right now we have to move on to the other ones, so we kind of have to start going to Marvel. Right now we're 18 minutes or 19 minutes at this point. We're almost done with the video. Let's get quicker. Firestorm villains for a bit. So we have both Crystal and Louise Lincoln, the Killer Frost. Both make sense. I mean, Killer Frost is part of the show. Even Caitlin Snow is in the show, so it makes sense. And the next villain up is Multiplex. In the comics, his name is Danton Black. He was a scientist who worked with Martin Stein. Martin Stein's also in the show. Danton used the nuclear energy and got the power to create duplicates. Basically, the same accident caused Firestorm also caused Multiplex. Multiplex, each duplicate he creates, which could be endless, has superhuman strength. So, the more duplicates he creates, the more stronger they can be. Don't know why he's not a Green Arrow villain. Don't know about that. The next one up is Typhoon. David Drake was a scientist who worked in the labs. Well, not a lab, but worked in a submarine, which water poured into, and when a typhoon approached, an explosion caused them to become typhoon. Drake has the powers of the water manipulation, pretty much a bunch of stuff. The next one up is Plastique. Well, no, not Plastique, Black Bison. Why did I say Plastique? Black Bison. I don't want to say Plastique because her backstory, you're just gonna straight up laugh at. Seriously, her backstory's gotta be the most horrendous backstory I've ever seen. But let's begin with Black Bison. Black Bison was the grandson of a member of the Bison cult, a Native American cult in the comics. Black Bison eventually got the cope stick and talisman of his great grandfather, and eventually used it. However, the cope stick corrupted him to become a supervillain. Now we're gonna go on to Green Arrow and Black Canary. Now for starting out, we have the Count Vertigo. Count Vertigo in the comics is one of Green Arrow and Black Canary's greatest enemies. Count Vertigo has the power of vertigo effects, to cause like dizziness, Count Vertigo is a seriously dangerous foe. In the comics, I think he's from Latva. Yeah, he's from Latva, a European country, which was devastated by the Spectre at one point, I believe. Anyways, Werner Zydo, as he was later called in the later stories, which I think makes sense for a name. Not really Werner Vertigo, but it's comics. You always have some weird names. Count Vertigo is like the others, reoccurring in seasons 1, 2, 6, and 7. Not sure about 1 and 7 though. They're not. Another Green Arrow villain we have is Constantine Dragon. Constantine Dragon is essentially one of Green Arrow's tougher foes, because every time, in fact, Constantine Dragon even defeated Green Arrow in their first encounter. He's so fast you don't even notice it. He's not even considered to be a metahuman, but he might be. Green Arrow has had hard times with Constantine Dragon on many occasions. Next supervillain we have is China White. China White in the comics is the leader of the China White Triad, or the Triad, something like that. China White basically was essentially the person who essentially pushed Oliver Queen, who turned Oliver Queen to the Green Arrow. But when she and her men pushed him out of the boat that he was on, which he landed on the island. And for the last Green Arrow villain we're gonna be talking about today, we're gonna be talking about Cupid. Cupid, stupid. Cupid in the comics was Carrie Cutter, who was abused by I think she went through a program. And she was a special ops soldier who went to a program, but turned her insane. Cupid was then abused by her husband, I think, and she was saved by Green Arrow, which then made Cupid so insane that she actually has a crush on Green Arrow. She has a deep hatred of Black Canary, but loves Green Arrow. She even kills some of his foes just to be with Green Arrow, which is kind of messed up. But I mean, comics is messed up, okay? Now we're gonna move on to Black Canary. Two of them I did mention, which were Count Vertigo and Cupid. The other one I'm gonna mention is Everyman. Everyman is actually an enemy of both Green Arrow and the Black Canary, so it still makes sense. Everyman is basically a shapeshifter who has the ability to shape into anything he touches. He took a project, the Everyman project, made by Lex Luthor, which essentially turned him into, who he is. His real name is Hannibal Bates in the comics. Hannibal is usually an enemy of... He's closer to the DC's Chameleon. He's essentially DC's version of the Chameleon in a lot of ways. the last Green Arrow, Black Canary villain we talk about is the White Canary. If you saw my video when I did White Canary versus the Maxim as the man, you would know that she's not, or why the human royal family should be Black Canary's arch enemy. You would know that White Canary really isn't that good of a character. The only thing about her is that she's just an assassin, but that's it. Really. She's also considered to be Black Canary's nemesis. Yeah. Anyways, let's go on to Hawkman. So the first one we have is Hawkset. Hawkset in the comics is essentially the guy who creates Hawkman. He was the rival of Prince Khufu. And so he cursed Khufu and Chayara and himself that they were going to be always reincarnated, where Chayara and Khufu are always set to die and fall in love and die at the hands of Hawkset, or one of his incarnations. Hawkset is the one that's the opposite. He can always survive and live. Hawkset is essentially Hawkman's arch nemesis in a lot of ways. Next up is the Gentleman Ghost. The Gentleman Ghost, I'm sure most of you heard of from Batman the Brave and the Bold. And I know a lot of you think he's either a Batman villain or a Green Arrow villain. That's what I thought initially. I said, this can make sense as a Green Arrow villain. But he's actually a Hawkman villain. Like multiplex, why? I don't know. But I mean, this is DC we're talking about. Life is confusing, okay? Well, Gentleman Ghost, his real name is James Craddock. He was an English criminal from the 18th century who usually steal stuff. Eventually, he was given a prophecy that he would transform into like a ghost or something like that. And eventually, I think he was killed by Nighthawk and Cinnamon. Nighthawk and Cinnamon, for those who don't know, are essentially Hawkman reincarnations. They're like some of the incarnation of Hawkman and Hawkgirl. Yes, it's confusing, I know, but I mean, Hawkman is confusing. The next Hawkman villain we have is Matter Master. For those who don't know, Matter Master is essentially a criminal who uses a wand that changes matter in a lot of ways. The final Hawkman villain, and the last DC villain we're going to be talking about is Shadow Thief. Shadow Thief was a criminal who, after he got exposure, was able to transform into like any living shadow. One of Hawkman's deadliest foes. Now let's move on to Marvel. Let's first start out with some more Captain America villains. So the first one we have is Baron Zemo. I decided to just do DC and Marvel for this one. Maybe I might do the others later. But right now, it's been a really long video. I've been speaking way too long. Baron Zemo is, I'm more referring to Baron Helmet Zemo because that's the most used. Baron Helmet Zemo in the comics is essentially like, Baron Zemo in the comics was the 13th person to become Baron Zemo. Well, after 12 was his father. But his father died at the hands of Captain America. And eventually, I think his face was disfigured, which now means that he has to wear that mask for the rest of his life. Baron Zemo has led the Masters of Evil on many occasions, and is one of the Avengers' greatest foes and one of Captain America's greatest foes. The next Captain America villain we have is Flag Smasher. Flag Smasher is essentially the opposite of Captain America, where Captain America represents nationalism. Flag Smasher represents anti-nationalism. Captain America and Flag Smasher are essentially the opposite. A lot of people say that Flag Smasher is essentially Captain America's Anarchy, who's also in the show. Like Lonnie Machin, the comics, is like an anarchism who wants the good for people, but has dark methods. Yeah, but I really wouldn't say. I would say that because Flag Smasher is more irredeemable than Captain Anarchy. But anyways, Flag Smasher is considered to be one of the greatest Captain America and one of the most underrated villains in the comics. Flag Smasher, essentially his backstory was that after his father was killed in a riot, he took training and decided to destroy the entire country using anti-nationalism. Yeah. Next Captain America villain we have, and it's going to be our last two, are going to be Armadillo and Porcupine. Armadillo was a criminal, was arrested, I think, who after his wife or girlfriend was, I think wife, was, got cancer, he agreed, he to, he had to become a criminal, took a serum and transformed into a armadillo to get money for his wife. Porcupine was a criminal, I think, or something like that, who used a suit that, shoots like a porcupine. I don't know much about porcupine. I do know more about armadillo. Let's move on to Iron Man. And for this one, we're just going to be Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, and Spider-Man. That's it. Iron Man, we have the Melter. The Melter in comics, I don't know much other than his name, Bruno Horgan. I do like the second Melter, Christopher Clovis, because he's closer to like the Flash villain Heatwave. But I'm not familiar with Bruno at all. Maybe you guys are. If you are, maybe you can just post some comments about him. The next Iron Man villain we have is Firebrand. And Firebrand was Gary Gilbert, who, used a suit which made him, fire, which created fire stuff. Firebrand obviously became an Iron Man villain because of the fact that he can just melt Tony's suit, but at the same time, etc. The next Iron Man villain, I again had to go through these really quickly. Sorry that I'm not giving like a lot of good reasons, because I really cannot. It's just there's so many characters in this show. I have to just make some videos about it, which sucks. So yeah. So another Iron Man villain we have is Detroit Steel. If you want to know more about him, because I don't have the time. Watch Channel Nerdgasm's top 10 Iron Man villains. If it says old series, Detroit Steel was in that one, and Ironmonger for the last one. Again, I think Ironmonger is in that same video I just mentioned from Channel Nerdgasm. Next up is Thor. Thor is actually my favorite rogue scary in Marvel. I know a lot of people like Spider-Man. I personally don't. Let's begin. Thor, we have like the Enchantress, the Enchantress, she's confirmed for the show. Loki is confirmed for the show. The Executioner, Hela, the Midgard Serpent, Fenris the Wolf. Again, I'm going to try to mention as quickly as I can. I try not to get any more reasons because I think that's too much at this point. Now let's go on to the Hulk, rogue scary. So one of them I did mention is the leader. The leader is essentially what if the Hulk wasn't strong but was very smart. The next Hulk villain we have is Zax. Zax is essentially an electric version of the Hulk, where he's like this monster. Zax is a very dangerous supervillain because he can take over the minds of people, which is how he usually gets his more powers. There are even times where even he was able to possess the freaking Hulk. Then the next and last one we're going to talk about is the UFOs. The UFOs are essentially evil version of Fantastic Four. Not quite, but still. You have like Vector, who is essentially Mr. Fantastic. Vapor, who's the Invisible Woman, who can transform into gas. X-Ray, who is essentially living energy, who is essentially Human Torch. And Ironclad, who is essentially made out of steel, who is the Thing in this universe. Well, this evil version of the Thing. The last one we have is Spider-Man villains. So first off, we have the Hobgoblin. He's confirmed for his TV show. Originally, I kind of wanted him to be in just season 4, but no, I don't think that's a good idea. The next one is the Jackal. He is essentially a professor who became, who after the death of Gwen Stacy at the hands of the Green Goblin, became insane and delusional. So that's why he became the Jackal, a master of clones. The next one up is the Grizzly. The Grizzly is essentially a wrestler who was exposed by J. Jonah Jameson, who essentially transformed him into a super strong criminal. The next one is the Kangaroo, an Australian wrestler who liked jumping high. Eventually, he was granted actual powers by a scientist who also essentially killed him in a fight with Spider-Man. So that is it for this video. This video is really long. I know this video is really long. I will do a part 2 very soon. So stay tuned for that. I'll see y'all next time. Goodbye.